Am I the asshole? At 26, my friend and I were going through one of the most exciting and intense times in our lives: pregnancy. We met as part of a larger friend group, but over the past several months, we'd become especially close. With both of us pregnant, me at 28 weeks, her at 23, it felt like we were sharing this unique journey together, one that only we, with our shared aches, anxieties, and excitement, could truly understand. We did the usual things: met up weekly to shop for baby stuff, grab lunch, and trade stories about our growing bumps. In the last month, though, things had started to shift. She began canceling our plans more and more, which I understood. Her husband was deployed, so she was alone most of the time except for her sister, who had her own family to care for. I knew she was feeling isolated, and I reminded her each time to call me if she needed anything at all. One evening, after she told me how much she was craving lasagna, I made a big one and sent it over with my husband. She'd been so grateful for that, and I could tell it lifted her spirits, if only for a little while. Yesterday she came over while I was in the middle of baking cookies and cupcakes for my nephews. She seemed a little low on energy, but we settled into a comfortable chat. Then out of nowhere she asked me what I'd been up to on the days we'd missed our plans. I told her about catching up with an old friend who'd been in town, spending time with family, signing up for prenatal yoga, and how my husband and I had finally finished our nursery shopping. I mentioned how fun it was to set up the nursery together. It felt like the first big milestone for our little one. I glanced at her and I could see her shoulders slump. She'd been staring at the cupcakes as I spoke, and the moment I noticed her shift in mood, I stopped talking. I reached over and gave her a little side hug. "I know it must be hard without him here," I said, trying to be empathetic. "Do you want us girls to come over one weekend and help you get the nursery ready? It's not the same, but maybe we could make it special." She looked tense, her face unreadable, and then suddenly she pulled away from my hug. I didn't know what to do, so I returned to icing the cookies and asked if she'd like one. She shook her head, but she kept staring at me, almost like she was struggling with something. Then softly she muttered, "Why do you always have to be this way?" I was caught off guard. "What do you mean?" She made a sweeping gesture toward me and said, "This. Like, why do you always make me feel shitty about myself?" I was stunned, searching her face for any sign of sarcasm or a joke, but there was none. I asked her what she was talking about, and that's when she started listing out all the things I'd been doing. The cooking, the prenatal yoga, keeping my house organized, and even having an active social life and intimate life with my husband. She looked exhausted, and I could see the frustration in her eyes. "It's like, you're always doing everything perfectly and I just feel like a lazy cow in comparison," she finally said. I was speechless. I'd never thought of myself as trying to make her feel bad. I was just being myself, living my life. I felt defensive but also sad because I'd never wanted my actions to hurt her, not even for a second. "Do you want me to be miserable too?" I finally asked, not knowing what else to say. I reminded her that these things weren't new for me. They were just my routines, things I'd done long before getting pregnant. She shook her head, clearly not satisfied. "I just thought we'd be in this together, but it feels like I'm falling behind you and it's all so effortless for you." Her voice was tinged with bitterness, and I could see that her resentment had been building for a while. Feeling uncomfortable, I gently asked her to leave, unsure of how else to handle it. She left without another word, and I was left in a kitchen full of cookies and cupcakes, a heavy sadness replacing what had been a joyful moment just hours before. That night I thought about texting her. But what could I say? I felt guilty that my happiness and routines had somehow made her feel worse, but I also felt hurt. A mutual friend who didn't know her well advised me to put some distance between us, but I was conflicted. She was going through so much alone and I knew how tough it must be, but on the other hand, why should my normal life make her feel this way?